Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Everyone, inshallah you guys are all doing well. This is Mr. Middlepath, and in today's video we are going to be going over the PMO cycle, how you can break out of it, why it's actually a lot easier to break out of than people think it is, because most people think it's impossible, and some practical and useful steps not only to change your mindset around this issue, but also to implement real-world steps today when you're done with this video. Please forgive any cracks or hoarseness in my voice. I am a little bit sick at the time of recording this. The second thing is, for those who are not new to the channel, please forgive the redundancy, but I will briefly go over my background so that people don't think that I'm just some YouTuber talking. I actually have a background in educational psychology. I have a master's degree in that. I have worked in a psychiatric hospital in Egypt, as well as in the mental health field in America, dealing with people that had addictions, bad family backgrounds, severe mental illnesses such as schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. I've also had some brief and humble experience editing research and being involved in research both at George Mason University as well as in the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine. So with that being said, let's begin the video. So the first thing that we need to look at is PMO as an obsession, as an obsessive compulsive type of thing, or compulsion, which is not how most people look at it, and PMO as an addiction, which is how many people look at it. So first of all, let's take a look at how it is very similar to a compulsion. And most of the time when we think about a compulsion, we think about the person that washes their hands. They have some type of obsession around cleanliness, or they have some type of anxiety that gets triggered by touching something like a doorknob that other people have touched. And so they wash their hands, sometimes to the point of pain, with hot water and soap multiples of times. Now, there's a type of ritualized behavior here in where some trigger stresses and anxiety. They go into a ritual or a compulsion to do a ritual to relieve that anxiety. That anxiety gets relieved temporarily, and then it starts all over again. And PMO is very similar. People get anxiety and restlessness. They see a trigger. They want to involve themselves in the ritual of watching, and then once they relieve themselves and the anxiety goes away, it restarts back up again. They feel guilty. They try and abstain. They see another trigger, and the cycle repeats itself. So how do we get rid of the compulsion side of things? Well, looking at the common factors in compulsions, one common factor is mental movies. So I want to talk a little bit about some lesser known types of compulsions, one of them being unrequited love or limerence. This is when someone is in love with someone and that person doesn't reciprocate their love. A lot of the times people are heartbroken, but they move on. For someone who develops this type of compulsion called limerence, they can never move on. They have to keep thinking about it. And the common factor is they have a trigger. They have to think through mental movies that play in their head. And they may think to themselves, what could life have been like if I was with this person? Or if I had done the right thing, would that person have said yes? And they'll begin to play mental movies in their heads to try and play out those scenarios. And the problem is the brain can think about infinite scenarios, so it never actually fixes itself, and they're stuck in this constant loop. They have a trigger, they feel some anxiety, they think through a mental movie, they feel a relief, but then it comes back again, and it cycles and cycles and cycles. A very similar thing is retrospective jealousy. This is when someone has jealousy over their partner's past. Now, sometimes people don't like their partner's past and they say, okay, well, I can't deal with this. I don't want to be involved with someone who has this many people in their past. Sometimes it can be something as simple as the person was previously married, but the jealousy doesn't allow that person to move on and have a healthy relationship. They may consistently compare themselves to a person's previous partner, have mental images or mental movies in their mind of what that partner was like. What were they better than me in bed? Were they better than me in this aspect or in that aspect? Maybe it actually gets triggered from a very simple thing, such as taking your significant other out on a date, and then you wonder to yourself, did my significant other have a date with that same person in a similar setting? What was it like? Oh, I'm not the first person that this person has watched a movie with, and so on and so forth, all the way up to extremely intrusive thoughts about sexual acts. And that can be very off-putting for some people, and it can, as you can imagine, break up relationships, especially if that person is not able to get a grip on themselves. And so, again, the common factor is mental movies. This person, once they get a trigger, they have to play through a mental movie, and the brain can think about infinite scenarios. So there's infinite things to be anxious about and infinite things to try and resolve and figure out in your mind. So how does this relate to the PMO cycle? Well, in the PMO cycle, you essentially have the same thing. You get triggered, you maybe see something suggestive, and you think to yourself, of a scene in your mind that you would like to see, or a scene in your mind that you've already seen, and you play it in your mind before you play it on the screen or look for it on the screen. And so this is a big component of the compulsions. Now, the number one thing is to label what you're experiencing as a compulsion. This doesn't mean that it is officially an obsessive compulsive disorder. That's not what I'm saying. It is important to label it as a compulsion to separate yourself from the problem and to deal with it separated from you. One of the problems with PMO is that it becomes part of the person's personality, and they think, I am the worst, I did bad, and they become very guilty and get a very low. And then when they relapse and get involved into this habit again, they have a very high. And if anyone knows anything about drugs and quitting drug addictions, you want to avoid very high highs and very low lows, because that perpetuates the chain. So we want to say, this is not me, it is a compulsion, and I'm going to deal with it as such. And simply, when you have a mental movie, neutrally label it as a mental movie and say, this is a mental movie, and just simply refuse to watch it. This does not require you to have a lot of willpower to push the mental image away, nor does it allow you to keep watching the mental movie or keep thinking of new scenarios in your head. Simply understand the fact that a mental movie has occurred in your brain and choose not to watch it. It will go away and it will pass on its own. And the more that you do this, the more it will pass. When you engage in the mental movie, it only causes the anxiety to grow. And this takes us to the second model, which is the model of looking at PMO, or the PMO cycle, as an addiction. And simply put, when we have an addiction, there is a trigger that causes urges until you can satisfy those urges. If you cannot satisfy those urges, you get to experience withdrawal pangs. So in this case, the trigger could be an intrusive thought or a suggestive image that you see, or something that you come across online or in real life that is suggestive, that makes you think these type of thoughts. We already talked about the mental movies, so we're not going to reiterate, but you'll have those urges. Those urges might take the place of mental movies, or the urge to look and scroll through more and more suggestive images or pictures. Next thing is understanding that just like these mental movies will pass if you refuse to watch them, these urges are like waves. They will pass if you simply ignore them. No matter how big a wave is in real life, such as a tsunami, for example, it will ride up high, but it will eventually crash back down. No matter how hard the urge that you're feeling is and how strong the withdrawal symptoms are, those urges will subside. And here's the good news that will allow you to be able to break out of this PMO lock once and for all, is the idea that you can do it. A lot of people think that they cannot leave hard drugs behind. And some of these drugs' withdrawal symptoms includes things that are involving physical pain and actual death. Like sometimes these drugs are so powerful that the withdrawal symptoms can cause severe physical pain that requires them to be hospitalized. Thankfully, with the PMO cycle, there is no withdrawal symptom that causes this type of severe pain. The most and the hardest withdrawal symptom is simply restless agitation, a type of restless agitation that gets to you. And this is a completely possible thing to just skip over and remind yourself that this urge will pass. No matter how much your heart is beating, no matter how much your mind is playing tricks with you or getting you to hyper focus on something, that urge will pass. That mental movie will pass. Do not engage with the urge and do not engage with the mental movie. Imam Ghazali, rahmatullah alayhi, a famous Islamic scholar who wrote Ihya al-Ulumuddin, which is very applicable to psychology today, writes about how you have palace gates and a charging bull is running in. You simply close the palace gates. Do not wait until the charging bull comes in and then try and drag it out by the tail. It'd be much more difficult to do. So, putting everything together, number one, recognizing that this is a compulsion and separating it from who you are. Number two, understanding that a component of this compulsion is mental movies playing in your head. Label them as mental movies and refuse to engage with them. Number three, understanding that urges are like waves. They will pass. 100% they will pass. And all you have to do is not engage with that urge and it will get lesser and lesser. Number four is understanding that your withdrawal symptom that you have to be aware of is restless agitation. And this is completely within the realm of possibility to deal with a withdrawal symptom like that, and it will get lesser and lesser. Number five, or the last thing that I want to talk to you about, is the fact that people actually believe that they are missing out when they try and lock out of the PMO cycle. They try and think that this is actually something that is enjoyable or enjoyable to them. And I want to dispel this myth once and for all, because what you're feeling is not actually relief. It is a relief from the withdrawal symptoms that the PMO caused in the first place. So it's not actually enjoyable the way eating an apple would be enjoyable. It is enjoyable in the same way that someone who is addicted to cigarettes feels a relief after they smoke a cigarette because of the anxiety that staying away from cigarettes caused in the first place. So I'll repeat that one more time. You're not actually getting enjoyment from the PMO sessions. What's happening is that you are feeling a relief from the withdrawal pangs that are caused by the PMO sessions themselves. And so the number one thing to do is to not engage with these PMO sessions. There is no habit in the world that makes you feel guilty after you're doing it, except for these types of nasty addictions. And I say nasty because we all know that if you had a child and they walked in on you doing something like this, you would feel righteous shame. And or if you had a parent or an elderly person like your grandmother walk in on you while you were doing this, you would also feel righteous shame. And the reason is for that because deep down, most people know that they should quit. The last bit of advice before I let you all go is this idea that I've seen countless times when talking to people about this, that they say, I will finish off this or I will quit this when I'm in a long-term relationship with someone, for example, when I'm married. And this is also a wrong thing to believe because people that are locked in to the PMO cycle are more likely to divorce their spouses. And in some cases and in some studies, that number is as high as 50% more likely to divorce. The parts of the brain that are activated when someone is engaged in PMO is completely different or is significantly different than the parts of the brain that are active when someone is engaged in the physical parts of a loving relationship with their significant other. I hope this was helpful to you all. If you need help and if you want more assistance with this or any other matter, I am available for coaching. You can reach out to me and I'll leave the link below. For those of you who found benefit with this video, please like, subscribe, and share with others. Inshallah, I hope to see you all in the next video. Take care. Peace out. Assalamu alaikum.